Welcome to this fifth PAVE Europe virtual panel. Today, we are here to have a conversation on how autonomous vehicles are shaping employment opportunities, a topic that has peaked global relevance and in particular here in Europe. In fact, 2023 has been named by the European Commission as the European Year of Skills, highlighting the importance of acquiring the right skills for quality jobs and addressing skill shortages. So my name is Guido Di Pasquale. I'm Managing Director at PAVE Europe, Partners for Automated Vehicle Education. And today we want to delve into this subject, acknowledging the concerns of students eager to prepare for AV-related jobs or artificial intelligence-related jobs, wondering about the necessary classes and skills. But also on the other hand, current workers may feel apprehensive about potential job changes due to automation. Looking at some data, according to Eurostat data in 2020, globally, China takes the spotlight as a prominent producers of STEM graduates. So STEMs, to remind, stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And alongside strong showing from countries like United Arab Emirates, Germany, and South Korea. So China itself produced 4.7 million STEM graduates a year. In Western European countries, excluding Germany, as I mentioned, we have lower proportions of STEM graduates, with UK, France, Spain hovering between 23 and 26%, and US has an even lower share with 19%. And the gender disparity remains an issue, of course. Also, another question is, do we exclusively require highly skilled positions in the field of autonomous vehicles, or is there potential for other job opportunities that do not necessitate extensive education? So to address these concerns and opportunities today, I'm very pleased to have three distinguished experts with us. Frances Williamson, Head of Stakeholder Engagement at Zenzic. Hello, Frances.
Hi, lovely to see you.
Nicholas Tomopoulos, Associate Professor in Transport at the University of Surrey and also Chair of WISACT, and you will tell us what it is. Nicholas, hello.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
And David Storer, Director for Research, Innovation, and New Mobility at CLEPA. So let's start with an introduction of yourself. What do you do and what you represent, and what few words about your organization. Frances, would you like to start telling us about Zenzic and your role and what you do in the AV space?
Lovely. Thank you very much, Guido. So I work for Zenzic, and we're a not-for-profit independent organisation funded by UK government and UK industry to promote connected and automated mobility across the UK and globally, supporting UK businesses and academia. And we support a variety of different projects, including CAM deployment projects, a roadmap to 2035, and an investment into the verification validation through CAM Testbed UK of SMEs, so that we can grow a really good, strong CAM ecosystem in the UK, recognizing the benefits and safety and environmental that it can bring.
Thank you, Frances. And Nicholas, what about you?
Sure. Thanks, Guido. Thanks for organizing this session. So I'm an associate professor in transport at the Department of Tourism and Transport at the University of Surrey, where I also lead the Living Lab. But I have also a couple of other hats. So although I'm based also in the UK as Frances, I think I'll just speak on behalf of some more of our European partners. So I'm leading Work Package 4 in We Transform, which is a project focusing on the impact of automation on the transport workforce, as well as summarizing issues about training and skills. That was also until last year the chair of WISAC, which focused on the wider impacts and scenario evaluation of autonomous and connected transport. So there are working groups 1 and 2. So the group leaders have loads of activities and like webinars, workshops, and our thematic reports are available on the website. So yeah, a few more issues coming up, and also WeTransform outputs will be out there late in the year. So feel free to check the websites if anyone is interested.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicholas and David. Could you tell us what more? CLEPA? What CLEPA
Yeah, good afternoon. So yeah, CLEPA is the European Association of Automotive Suppliers. So basically we represent the entire supply network across Europe. We have over 120 direct members, but also through the national associations. So each country in Europe which has a strong automotive industry has a national association, and the national associations are our members too. So altogether we have over 3,000 members. So it's an extensive network. I should mention also that another one of my roles is that I'm in the executive group of what we call the CCAM partnership. So it's that CCAM stands for Connected Collaborative Automated Mobility. This is the European partnership that brings together all stakeholder groups actually interested in CCAM. And there I'm co-leading the cluster on vehicle technologies together with somebody called Gerian Meyer, who works in Germany in the VDI, VDE, IT. And yeah, this is one of 7 clusters of the CCAM partnership, the one that's focusing specifically on developing vehicle technologies.
Thank you, David. And now let's start a bit to discuss about the topic of today, and I would like to start with Nicholas from the academic perspective, and also based on your research and projects that you mentioned with Transform and WISAC. So to set the scenes, what are the main concerns and the potential implications of autonomous vehicles on the job market, and specific industries or job roles that are more likely to be affected by automation? So that's the question that everyone.
Yeah, I think it's quite large things. I can make a start, and then of course Francis and David can also chip in. So yeah, I'll start actually with the WeTransform project we've been working about, and then this is led by Polytechnic Torino, so Professor Cristina Pronello in Italy, and this is a large project with more than 30 partners, and there's various ongoing activities. But overall, the sense that we're getting is that there will be positive, negative impacts, so both sides, but there's also quite a bit of uncertainty, not unexpected so far. Quite interestingly, the transition phase is also quite important. So this is what will lead us to this, and then we'll have the different levels of automation, for example. So as we move along this, then what does this impact on jobs? So in brief, there will be some winners and some losers, and there will be across different areas or different industries, and this is fine on one hand, but of course the whole aim here is to try to mitigate this. So what we've done in WeTransform with lots of partners in this project is that we just identified some high-level categories. So one is the business transition. So corporations and organizations, they will need to change and transform themselves slightly. And this ranges from SMEs to multinationals. There is training skills. I mean, that's a big area again. Things are happening, and I'm sure there will be more examples by Francis and David. But things like also working conditions and the social issues, those are also areas that are attached to this and may not seem directly relevant to some people right now. But we see increasingly discussions focusing on those issues, particularly when you speak with middle and lower level managers or workers, actually. So I can say a few more things about job roles, Guido, or I can make a pause and continue a little bit.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, I mean, again, I'm just finishing off. And so just some roles actually that might be relevant. So what we've seen through our interviews, we did interviews with about 80 stakeholders across Europe and a few countries also outside Europe. So we have partners in the US, North America, and then a couple of countries in the Middle East and Asia. So as people can expect there will be a higher need. So I'm focusing a bit more on the positive side now. So the new roles being created, because there has been a lot of literature, I mean, a lot of discussion the past few years about the job losses, but there will be also some new jobs created, either within the same organizations or new organizations. And those will be linked with automation experts or autonomy experts, depending how fast we move to the higher levels of automation. Things like IT experts, those software development. And again, this is a broad term, but within software development, there are different tasks, different job roles. Maintenance is quite important. So I'll tell you maybe a little bit later an interesting fact by one of our colleagues in We Transform. Data analytics, but also customer success experts, as we call them. So what is success, and how this, AVs, how can they help bring the new impact of those benefits across the industry and societies? Because what we need to remember, and we hear again and again, is that regardless of all this background, new technologies, innovation, at the end of the day, what the people who travel want is to travel from A to B in a convenient way. And the same applies for freight, of course, not only for passengers transport. And just to finish off, I got like a few more points on that, is data analytics, as I said, this is there, but also includes things like cybersecurity or privacy experts and data policies, which links again to data ethics and artificial intelligence governance. So those are important issues. And the last point I will say, and this is only because our school here in Surrey focused on this, is maybe there will be an opportunity to link a bit more transport with tourism, and this, so non-commuting travel. But I know this might be a side issue for some, so I'll make a pause here, and I can revisit things if there is interest later on.
Thank you, Nicholas. Very, very interesting, and this gives an overview of the overall issue. And I'm curious to know by Francis. Well, your title is Head of Stakeholder Engagement, and I think this is very important in this case to engage with the stakeholders, and you are also linked to the UK government. So how the government is actively engaging with the different stakeholders to address this impact or potential impact of AVs on employment?
Yes, the government, like I said, I don't work for the government, but I do know we work very closely with them, and we know that they're doing quite a bit of work here. This is quite an unknown territory, so there's lots of things that we need to kind of figure out as we go along. And I think there's a view that it's going to be a bit of an organic kind of evolution and introduction of this new technology into the workplace. It's unlikely to be a kind of overnight transformation kind of thing. And the UK government is doing research through the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles, CCAV, and with their connections with the Department for Transport, into what is the impact of this on users of mobility solutions. Like Nicholas was saying, people really just want to get from A to B, but also people who work within these industries. So in the freight and logistics industry, for example, what are the impacts, both positive and negative, of this technology? So there's obviously clear safety opportunities for this, so to reduce the number of incidents that happen on the road for people driving for their work, freight and logistics work, for example. But also there's a recognition that we don't have enough drivers as it is. So how can we take and solve smaller problems when it comes to gaps in the skills market with technology, and actually give those who do work in that industry other more interesting jobs? So in one of the recent announcements and activities going on with government at the moment is the CAM Deployment UK projects, and they have that's 7 projects across the country: Belfast, Edinburgh, Sunderland, Cambridge and the Midlands, where actually part of those projects is looking to see what is the impact on jobs, and how we can either upskill people or cross-skill people into learning new skills to kind of work in this sector.
Thank you, Franz. So this these are the, let's say, you said it's an unknown territory, but yeah, you also mentioned some policies or programs that are considered to support the workers. Are there any specific programs to support workers in adapting to these new technologies, to AI, to autonomous vehicles, CCAB in particular?
I think this is where we're still trying to work things out, and we need to look to see where those gaps are and what needs to be done, working with academics as well across universities in the UK and beyond, and working with industry to see exactly what are the skills that are going to be needed, how can we shift people into those, what's the scope of them, especially considering we're trying to, you know, for new people into the working environment, we're trying to design academic plans for jobs that don't actually exist yet. So, you know, I think there's a lot of work going on at the moment. I don't think there's anything specifically answering that question, but I know there's a lot of other activity going on to see exactly, you know, how industry can work with government to make sure that there is those plans in place to support workers. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Frances. And David, you represent CLEPA and the industry side, I would say, and the industry is already impacted by this, or will be impacted by this revolution. Yeah, how does the industry perceive this impact on AV in particular, because we are discussing AV today on employment, and are there any plans from this industry side to adapt to this transformation of existing jobs and align to with the new needs and new requirements from technology side?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the social side is really important, and we absolutely try to take this into account in the CCAM partnership. But from the industrial perspective, let me just focus on the opportunities. So as you can imagine, you know, the development and implementation of the technologies for connected automated vehicles and for smart mobility in general is very high on the list of priorities for our members and obviously the members of the CCAM partnership. And this brings with it, obviously, the need to nurture and orientate talent towards technology developments, and really to be able to have access to excellently qualified and highly motivated personnel across Europe. But of course, we work in a truly global industry and the marketplace. And, you know, there's increasingly, there's competition for the talent that's available. And it's, you know, quite difficult. It looks to be quite difficult to be able to secure a highly skilled and talented workforce in the future for the development of these technologies in Europe. I think you were mentioning about the fact that Europe is perhaps a little bit behind, well, China at least, or some of the regions in the world in terms of not the quality, but the quantity of STEM, you know, engineering and science students and graduates. And, you know, this is a big issue, but it's also really important that we're able to attract the graduates and the talent to our sector. So not only do we have a competition with other regions around the world, we have competition with other sectors of industry. And literally, we will need thousands of freshly educated and trained personnel, so engineers and scientists every year going forward. And yeah, the skills that we need, it's been mentioned, but it's obviously in electronics, in ICT, information communication technologies, so hardware and software, machine learning. We talk about artificial intelligence a lot nowadays. You know, not many people have studied that. Not many people actually are experts in this. Cybersecurity, a hugely important area, but also the areas of sustainability, you know, advanced materials, circularity, and life cycle assessment. These are all, let's say, relatively new topics that are being studied, but we do expect to see new programs, new degree programs, certainly the master's level, where these different courses are in some way bundled together, so addressing all of these different emerging fields. And of course, we need to also ask if we have sufficient experts to train everybody that's required because it's so new and it's developing and evolving so quickly. But, you know, I think what we need to do is not look for the perfect solution immediately. We need to take like an engineering approach and just basically get on with it. You know, and I think, you know, in the past, there was very much a direct engagement with industry in terms of training individuals, mentoring young talent, developing training programs, also directly with the universities. Now, perhaps that in a way in recent years kind of disappeared to some extent, but I certainly see this coming back, you know, this sort of direct interaction. Francis referred to industry with government. Industry, government and academia working together to really define what is required and to address these needs. I think this is really going to become very important in the future, and certainly our members, industry in general, is absolutely looking forward to that. It's going to invest, it's going to be part of this. And we also, as an association, both CLEPA, as the Association of Automotive Suppliers, but also the CCAM partnership, you know, we have a role to play in that as well. And we don't want to shirk our responsibilities. We're absolutely ready to get involved. And indeed, we are involved in different programs, as I'll perhaps mention in a few minutes.
Thank you, David. In fact, this topic of collaboration is quite crucial. Well, as we know, Europe is quite diverse. We have different countries with different approaches, and we have example of great collaboration between universities or research centers and local industries, but also examples of where this collaboration is not happening at all. And working as Europe as a continent is not always easy. And Francis, I would like to ask you, how can this collaboration between government, industry, educational institution be strengthened to ensure this smooth transition? Because probably in CCAV and automation, artificial intelligence now is more requested than ever, and we need to find strategies to pursue this.
Absolutely. And I think having those three different groups of stakeholders working together is the answer. And actually by doing things, doing and learning and evolving is one of the really important ways. So for example, one of those 7 projects that I mentioned that the government and industry are co-investing in is one called VCAL. You can check it out on our website. It's on zenzic.io, and the other 6 projects are there as well. And it's where companies and academia have come together to look to see how they can blend this technology into how the business works. So this one is led by a company called Vantech. They supply goods to Nissan in the northeast in Sunderland, and the requirement is that they deliver goods on the hour, every hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days, possibly have Christmas off, I'm not quite sure, days of the year. And trying to find drivers to do what is effectively a very short, a little bit on public road, a little bit on private road, less than a mile, like from A to B, going backwards and forwards 24 hours a day is not the most exciting job for a driver to do. I think, and also trying to find drivers to do that, to deliver these goods every hour on the hour is very, very hard as well. So if we can blend people and the technology together to deliver these goods, to secure those jobs up in the northeast, to ensure that Nissan can continue to manufacture the cars up there with technology, and actually give those people work. So people will still need to get involved with the delivery of those vans and trucks from A to B. And so how can we skill those people currently driving those to doing some other jobs that are slightly more interesting, more exciting than a 2 o'clock in the morning job in November, driving less than a mile from up the road. So it's using those real tangible examples, asking the workforce, what do they think of this? What are the benefits of it? The feedback is pretty good, but there's still lessons to be learned. There's safety implications. Some of these jobs are not, in the nicest, cleanest environment. So how can we use this technology to improve the safety of those jobs as well, and also the environmental impact? So I know the UK Auto Council has a CAM group looking at skills as well, working with their members to, like David was saying, about how we actually learn from people doing it on the ground on a daily basis. How can we improve their jobs, and how can we provide the solutions that industry needs to keep working, basically?
Thanks, Frances. And this also reminds me the importance of having a proper social dialogue between the industry and the sector and representatives of workers, the unions, and to educate them also on what is happening, and also to mitigate this fear that they may have in potential loss of jobs that like you mentioned, drivers and others, but there will be a transformation and not a loss of jobs. And the role of education here is very important. David, coming back to you, CLEPA is a European organization representing industries, and I would like to talk about European competitiveness and the future. So what is your view on the need to focus on this technology and to recover competitiveness in Europe despite the skills shortage? Because you mentioned that there is a skill shortage, that there are not enough graduates in these key competencies. So what's the role of Europe here?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, there are different initiatives across Europe looking at developing skilled and educational programs. Let me just mention in particular the Automotive Skills Alliance. And there are specific projects linked to that. Projects like AllBat, which is focusing on batteries, so the competencies required to develop batteries, again, in Europe, because we want to set up a strong battery manufacturing facility across Europe. That's very important for our competitiveness in electric vehicles. And there's also a project called Flamenco, which we are also involved in on the advisory board as CLEPA. Yes, so to my understanding, these initiatives are really defining syllabuses for specialist education and upskilling training programs, as is now and will be required by the automotive industry going forward. And there are also different initiatives being promoted by the European Commission, again, because it's such an issue which is going to affect so directly competitiveness of Europe. The European Commission is very much behind the setting up of academies for training and education in Europe. Again, looking at what's required for the future, specifically for electromobility, but also for connected and automated mobility. Looking also at the question of artificial intelligence, there's a lot of trepidation at the moment, naturally, about how artificial intelligence will affect our lives in the future. A lot of experts are expressing opinions on this, and it's really important, I think, that we follow these discussions. But at the moment, I think we need to look at how we can harness artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies, such as also the meta-space, virtual reality. How do we harness these technologies to put ourselves in a competitive position, given the fact that we have fewer graduates, fewer, let's say, already skilled people coming through the educational system with respect to those areas in the world that we're competing against. So I really see a significant role for artificial intelligence, particularly in the design and optimization of products. This is something that we've been working on already for many, many years in the automotive industry. We talked today about digital twins, but honestly, I've been in the automotive industry now for over 30 years. And for many more years than that, we have been developing numerical model simulation models, which are basically the foundation on which we can then develop machine learning processes to optimize products. And I think we need to harness these technologies to be in a competitive position going forward. Yeah, you know, in Europe, we have a tendency to be a little bit fragmented, despite our best intentions. We're good at collaborating, but there's a lot of initiatives kind of popping up always in different areas, and it's not easy always to bring them together. And I think that's really important that we try to stop this fragmentation, really try to, you know, network on a wider level, particularly in this area of skills development. You know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to define syllabuses that are required and then can be in some way executed, let's say, in academic institutions and research centers across Europe. And I also think we should exploit European projects more than we are doing at the moment in terms of education and training. I think this is a low-hanging fruit, and we heard about the We Transform project this before. You know, this is the type of thing that I think should be utilized and developed across European projects. There's so many around, and there's so many that we are in some way mentoring through the CCAM partnership in this area of connected automated mobility. And I do think, you know, there's room there for, like I say, improvement to avoid fragmentation. Yeah, and I'm also thinking, if I may, that perhaps the Marie Curie Skłodowska program, which I think has been very, very successful in Europe, but is perhaps underfunded. Perhaps we need to find a way of reinforcing that program and having it oriented more towards education and training. You know, at the moment, it's essentially a research program where research centers of excellence across Europe work together and work with young engineers and scientists so that they are able to do PhDs or post-PhD activities. You know, I think, again, there's a real opportunity that we can not only extend this more to training and education on a wider level, but also develop a link to the big initiatives like the CCAM partnership. So at the moment, we don't have a link in the CCAM partnership to education and training. Why not? You know, it's relatively easy to set up, I would suggest. And perhaps we can link that to other programs like the Marie Curie program in order to, you know, push forward, or let's say give a boost to this whole area of education and training in this specific area of CCAM.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's an excellent proposal, and that we may take as an action also to talk to the CCAM, and also as PAVE Europe we can help in this. And this goes back to Nicholas again as a representative of a university, the academics perspective. So the educational institutions like yours can really have a key role here. So what are the steps to effectively prepare students and to meet the skills requirement that David just mentioned, and also Francis mentioned, for the innovative mobility systems and services, and considering the development of autonomous vehicles that we are seeing today?
Yes, there were some great points actually, and I'll pick up what David said just now in the end. So you have excellent suggestions, David, so thanks a lot. I'll just say, as also a previous Marie Curie fellow myself, that's an excellent scheme, and there are more kind of options now within this Marie Curie Skłodowska scheme. But universities are sometimes a bit slow to respond, so they, you know, participate in projects. There are some people who are really active, and you all know them, and you collaborate, which is great, in CCAM, in other, you know, in the UK, Francis, you really know them. But sometimes as a university, as a sector, it's a bit slow. You know, just as an example, now we're planning the next academic year. So if something doesn't go in the next few weeks, you have to wait for another 12 months, more or less, to make those changes, right? Just to give you a brief example. And this is exactly where I think PAVE and PAVE Europe, and what David was saying about the academies, I think, like, we discussed this in WISAC, we discussed it, We Transform now. Those are really great opportunities. Another option I would say is this kind of living lab example. I think it was interesting what Francis was saying about these drivers doing something that, well, it's not the most exciting job in the world. Those jobs do exist also before automation, just to be clear. But I mean, yeah, we can try to make them a bit more exciting. So living labs is a way of merging also STEM sciences that you were saying, Guido, with those social sciences or life sciences. I mean, this is also interesting. And again, to pick up a point, I think, David, you mentioned it about electric vehicles, for example. So you spoke about batteries. And sometimes also in our fields, we tend to separate those two. So AVs and EVs and then different types of vehicles. The reality is, as we said at the beginning, that people and goods want to move from A to B. They don't really mind if it is, an AV or an EV. So, having lots of publications also, we did with some WISE colleagues also about, shared, autonomous, electric, and you can add more letters in the acronym if you want. So we'll call them SAVs, but there are different acronyms. So essentially incorporate this and have those elements included. But the small steps, I would say, is to have universities collaborate with different organizations. So this CCAM suggestion, definitely, I would second that. So let's try to institutionalize this a bit more, create those channels. And I think there is, I can't remember now, David, if it's the workstream 6 or 7, but there is some potential there. But yeah, it has to be a bit better institutionalized. And just to sum up, Guido, I'll just say from Deliverable 4.1 in WeTransform, which should be available through the website in the next few months. One other thing that is quite important about this education and training is the certification schemes. So one thing that we're looking at, and again, happy to discuss it with PAVE, is there is a potential in the near future, so the next couple of years, to see an emergence of those kind of webinars and academies and all that. Now, then you go back to the challenge of how do one manufacturer, OEM, or one organization know that this is, a decent training or not. So those certifications are important, and it will be down to probably not specific universities, but, a consortium of universities, or, CLEPA or CCAM or Zenzic, just to go down and certify this. So I'll just leave it here, and then, can discuss about how do you link this with specific skills and competencies, and we can discuss this if there's any time in the end.
Thanks, Nicholas. Last round of questions for you before we close. David, we talked about a transition here, because it's the autonomous vehicles are coming. We are preparing for that. But how can we help the workers, or how can we address their needs to accompany them to this transformation? What type of measures we can the sector can implement to address this transformation, to support them to be ready for this?
Yeah, thanks. So I mean, we've talked about the need for education, and training, and reskilling. But I also want to get back to what Nicholas was saying about it being slow, there being inertia in the system, or some reluctance also in academic institutions or research institutes or whatever to actually make changes to their curricula. We need to make sure that all of this becomes more mainstream. We can't just focus on a few elite, select, specialist master's courses here and there. We need to bring all of this training and reskilling much more mainstream, and therefore it's much more diffused across many academic institutions, right across the board. I would say, though, that we also, we discuss this quite a lot in CCAM, how ready are we for fully automated vehicles? In my personal opinion, we're still quite a long way away before we don't need drivers in vehicles. And when I say a long way away, we're talking at least 10 years, maybe 20 years or even more. This is my personal opinion. So, what we're trying to do now is develop the technologies to make vehicles really safe and getting very close to driving themselves, but we still need drivers. We still need the human in the loop to make sure, to sort of monitor what's going on. But the vehicles will become a lot easier to drive, and if the driver is distracted, then the vehicles will be safer, and that's what we want to achieve. Particularly when we're talking about, let's say, the more boring jobs, or let's say the missions where it's easier to get distracted, like driving along the motorway. We've all been there, we've all done that, and we know that how dangerous it can be if we do get distracted. So even though we're still quite a few years away before full automation actually, becomes commonplace, we do need to move fast and without delay. And this gets back to what I was saying before about the inertia in the system. We also need to attract the young. So when I say the young, I mean the people who are not even yet at university. We need to go into the schools. I know people talk about this a lot, but honestly, I myself have been going to schools already for many years and talking to third graders and fourth graders about the future, about technology, but in a really sort of simple, straightforward way, but trying to stimulate interest, trying to nurture their interest and enthusiasm for what the future holds. I say I'm an engineer, I'm very interested in this technology, but I think other people also can be interested in what we do because it is extremely interesting, but it's also very relevant to society in general, as we're discussing now. I also think we need to consider about how to engage with people a little bit older, like myself. I mean, I'm 57 years old. So people of my age group, obviously there's a fear about what's going to happen to their jobs, this sense of job insecurity. But again, let me just say there are so many opportunities, really. They're great opportunities. I mean, they are life-changing, I have to be honest. But, I come from a generation where we are familiar with computers. We are able to grasp the concepts of the technologies that we are talking about. It might not be straightforward, but with the right training and with the right educational professionals, or the right teachers, then I think, it can be, as I say, a life-changing experience, but a very positive one. And there are certainly huge opportunities there, at least in the industry segment.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Nicholas, what research is missing now? So in terms of research, what do we miss to understand better the impact of AVs on future jobs? Where there are many projects we mentioned, there are other studies that can we do more in terms of research?
Absolutely, Guido. And there have been efforts, as Francis was saying earlier, from the UK government, for example, the European Commission, certain other countries in Europe promoting this. But I'd just like to highlight then a couple of key points that have not been discussed a lot. So on what David was saying now, for example, like the older people, so who have done the WISE Act survey and then collaborate with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. So there was actually a very interesting part about older people. And we discussed the transition phase and the need to bring, STEM sciences with social science and life sciences together. So the three I will kind of highlight. One is the insurance liability. So there have been focus on projects in the past 10 years, lots of projects, but still a long way to cover in that. And if universities and academia are a bit slow sometimes, we all know that the legal profession is even a bit slower some other times. So that's something that needs to be taken into account. And on the actual topics, we'll also say that privacy and surveillance actually is quite interesting, should not be neglected. So we need to mention this on the worker side, but of course on the user side, and all of those ethical issues that have been discussed. There has been a high-level expert groups in Europe and different kind of approaches. So one way to do this will be based on different principles, so a principle-based approach, and to do some kind of testing, as I was saying. And maybe to finish off and leave maybe 1 minute for Francis, it's just to also focus on the SMEs. So not only focus on the large organizations, but also not forget the SMEs.
Thank you, Nicholas. And as you said, I would like to leave the last word to Francis. How to raise awareness, for example, among the different stakeholders, or what did we miss in this conversation today that you would like to add?
I think we've covered a lot of ground actually, and I think recognizing that there is such a complex stakeholder landscape here, from school children, and we work and closely related to an organization called Curiosity Box that does exceptional work in primary school children to kind of upskill the teachers and the kids into the opportunities in STEM, through to a company called Petrus, who's based in Paris, who does looking at the needs for industry going into the future, coming and working with academia there as well. And the different industries that are going to be impacted on this, from the insurance industry through to local authorities as well, who have a great role to play. Our roadmap to 2035 has identified some of the areas that needs a little bit more intensive work to kind of figure out what the answers are. And we've also done a supply chain report that highlights some of the job opportunities, you know, where from a UK perspective, where we can really excel from deploying kind of some really good, strong jobs. So there's great opportunities, and what we need to do, I think, is work out where the risks are and what we need to do to mitigate those.
Thank you very much, Frances. Our time is up. Thank you, David. Thank you, Frances. Thank you, Nicholas, for joining this conversation that I enjoyed very much. And video will be available. Yes, it's a pleasure. And video and podcast will be available soon. And I hope to see you at the next virtual panel. Thank you all for joining us today, and looking forward to see you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.